Hi YouTube, welcome to my new video. Today I had a look at a couple new decks that emerged after the expansion came out. It's three elemental decks. I'm going for an elemental theme this video. So I have for you an elemental rogue, elemental shaman, and an elemental mage. And how I found these lists is I had a look at Hearthstone Replay. Here you see it. So I looked at the stats for Legend only because I just wanted to see like decent stats, right? And then you can see Elemental Mage actually tier 1 in Legend, surprisingly. But I tried it and it did really well for me too. I just didn't really expect it to be that good that it ended up in tier 1. But with an almost 60% win rate, that is quite an insane number. Then we scroll down just a little bit. Tier 2, Elemental Shaman, 55.38%. Still like really good win rate. Have not tried this deck myself yet, but I faced it on ladder a few times, lost to it. And I also saw this deck on the Donkey website that I showed you yesterday where I could find the decks. And also on Donkey, this had like an almost 60% win rate over a couple hundreds or more games. So definitely also a deck to keep an eye on. And then last but not least, also in tier 2, we have Elemental Rogue with a 52.89% win rate. I think the win rate for this deck is a little bit lower because it's more combo-y and there are more things you need to consider. So maybe people have just not been playing it optimally because I think the other two decks are just slightly easier to play and a little bit more curvy like throughout the whole game. But I'm going to just have a look at all three of them. I will leave the deck codes for you in the description. So if you want to try any of these decks, just copy the paste, put it in the client, and you're good to go and you can start playing some games. So I'm going to just remove this here. We're going to have a look first at the Elemental Rogue. I already briefly discussed this yesterday in the best 5 decks to play on ladder right now because this one, especially in high legend, has been performing really well. You just need to like get used a little bit to how things work exactly. So what you want to do is just try to curve elementals early on in the game, like just play one a turn so you don't run out, ideally, unless you have more. And then the lamplighter is going to get buffed a lot. This is actually the theme of all three of the decks, right? The lamplighter is the one thing that makes these decks really good now after the expansion came out. So the lamplighter will deal 1 damage to wherever you want it to go, enemy face preferably, or it could hit a minion as well. So it deals 1 damage, but it gets improved by each turn in a row you've played an elemental. So you see where this is going, right? You just play an elemental every turn in a row until this gets buffed up like to 6, 7, 8 damage. And the good thing about Rogue is it has access to Shadow Step and Breakdance and Bounce Around and Sonya. So there's so many ways of just non-stop pushing more damage, more and more and more with the Lamplighters. Plus, you already have these elementals on board that can do some chip damage as well, or take trades so you don't die. So very interesting deck. I played it a little bit myself as well this morning to try it out before trying to explain it more to you, and I just only won so far. So there's definitely a lot of potential with this one. Just keep in mind it can get a little bit combo-y. So if that's not your style, maybe you're better off trying one of the other elemental decks that I'm going to show you now. But because we already talked about this one in my previous video, I think we can just go to the next one, and that is Elemental Shaman. Interesting deck. Have not played it myself, but based on the stats and the fact that I lost against it on ladder yesterday a couple times, I want to say this is a pretty good deck too. Plus, it's a tier 1 deck with a 55% win rate in Legend, so surely there is something there. It's kind of the same story again, right? You just wanna play your elementals every turn, curve it a little bit. It's like a nice and easy curve stone. You try and hit a 1-drop on 1, a 2-drop on 2, and just keep playing the elementals, keep buffing up Your Lamplighter, same as before. What you have here is the Magata as well, so you can draw your elementals a bit easier if you were to run out. You also have Scar here, which deals 1 damage to all enemies, improved by each turn in a row you played an elemental. So here we don't really bounce the Lamplighter that much, but we have the Scar as an extra way to deal more damage. Plus, this is not just hitting one enemy. You don't have to choose. This is going everywhere. So it's like a big AoE plus face damage all at once. So this is more like a late game finisher or AoE if you need it. Azerite Giants will come down pretty easily because you are just going to curve your elemental. So these should come down like in the mid game easily if you draw them. Calamos, this is like an old card that came back to the core set this year. So if you play an elemental last turn, cast an elemental invocation. This is just like an extra way of getting some value. Don't know how good this one in particular is now in the current meta, but I think you have enough stuff anyway. Plus, it's an elemental; you are going to be able to use it. Then the one last thing I wanted to talk about is Insidious. 6 mana, 2/10. At the end of your turn, upgrade your eruptions. Battlecry, shuffle 5 eruptions in your deck. And the eruptions deal damage every time you draw one from your deck, and every time the Insidious is on your board and it doesn't die. At the end of your turn, you're gonna get upgraded. So if this if this sticks for a while, it's gonna like improve the damage every time every turn this lives. So this is like a pretty nice like extra thing that you might not really need, but in some cases it's just good. And plus a 2/10, it's quite sticky. It's not that easy to get rid of it. I think it's a very fun new card from the set that's finally like helping the other elementals as well that we already had in standard and that were not really playable. So Elemental Shaman, for the Shaman enjoyers, definitely want to have a look at. Then, last but not least, Elemental Mage. I played this deck yesterday on ladder. At first, it went really well. Then I had a little trouble in some games finishing because, well, the elementals itself are not super strong, obviously. You need to, like, just try and survive and then go for a nice Lamplighter lethal. In this deck, you have a Brewmaster, which I think is really good because you can play the Lamplighter and then just send it back to your hand and push again. It's kind of like what you're doing with the Rogue and Shadow Step. This is a little bit more expensive, but it can get the job done. Right. So you are going to just curve your elementals again. Don't keep the 1-drop, the 1/3 here. Don't keep it to combo it with spells because there are not any big spells. Like the only spell in the deck is Flame Gazer. You don't need to keep this. This is just to have a 1-drop and like find an easier curve and just curve out all the elementals. So don't keep it, just drop it on 1 if you have it. This one is very nice because it makes your next elemental cost 2 less. So if you play this on 2, you will be able to play a 4-drop elemental on turn 3 and just like cheat it out a little bit quicker. This one, the Unchained Gladiator is a good way to refill your hand a little bit because it will draw you a card for each elemental you play last turn, and you will always draw at least 2 cards, right? Because you draw 1 and then it gets repeated for each elemental you've played on your last turn. Sometimes if you have this in hand, you could go for like, and you really need to draw, you just try to like play a couple more elementals if you can, like some of the small ones, and then just draw more and then you get a refill anyway. Tainted Remnant also was pretty good for me because if you've played an elemental last turn, this one will deal 7 damage randomly split between all enemies. So if you are like kind of getting a bit behind on board, this is a great way to come back. Or if there are no minions, this is just 7 damage face, right? So really good, really nice. Again, the Azerite Giants are going to come down in the mid game quite easily. Just keep curving your elementals. You should have 1 in hand at least every turn. Well, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed my little elemental video today. Tomorrow I will be back with some more decks or more gameplay. depending on if I find some really interesting stuff for you. As usual, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please leave a like, a comment, subscribe to the channel, anything you can to support me. Thank you very much and see you again tomorrow. Bye.